All right, so once again, we're going to find the zeros of a polynomial function, state the number of possible real zeros and the number of turning points. But this time we're going to look at something called the quadratic form, which is then we're going to utilize something called U substitution to help us with the factoring. So we've got f of x equals x to the fourth minus 9x squared plus 18. Well, the number of possible real zeros, since that leading term is x raised to the fourth power, I can have 4 possible real zeros. That means also that I would have 3 turning points, 4 minus 1, using that leading term. Now, if we were to rewrite this equation, this x to the fourth minus 9x squared plus 18, in quadratic form, it would appear as this. So I've got x squared squared. Well, x squared raised to the power 2 is x to the fourth, minus 9x squared plus 18. And then we use something called U substitution, where we say that U is equal to x squared in this case. And then I can substitute U in for x squared back into the original equation. That's 18, not 8. And I've got it what appears to be in a more quadratic form. It's where we can factor. So let's draw a couple of sets of parentheses. I got a u squared, so we got u. And let's see, I got my constant term is positive, my middle term is negative. That tells me that inside my parentheses I'm going to have negative, negative. And I need 2 numbers that are going to multiply to 18 and add to negative 9. Well, let's see, 18 and 1, that's not going to cut it. 9 and 2, that's not going to cut it. But negative 6, negative 3 gets me there, because negative 6 times negative 3 is positive 18. And negative 6 minus 3 is negative 9. Now that we've got this in this factored form, we're going to resubstitute x squared for u into each of these factors. And then we're going to set each factor equal to 0 and solve. All right, well, let's add 6 to both sides. So we got x squared equals 6. We're going to take the square root of both sides. Well, the square root of x squared is just going to be x. And that's going to equal plus or minus the square root of 6. So there's 2 zeros right there. All right, let's do the other factor. We're going to add 3 to both sides. So we got x squared equals 3. Again, we're going to take the square root of both sides, where x now is equal to plus or minus the square root of 3. So our zeros then are plus or minus square root of 3 and plus or minus the square root of 6, where we utilize the quadratic form and U substitution. Let's do one more. All right, here we got h of x equals x to the fifth minus 6x cubed minus 16. Well, I can see that I can factor out of x right away, so let's do that. Then that's going to leave me with x to the fourth minus 6x squared minus 16. And since we're talking about quadratic form and U substitution, well, let's go ahead and continue to rewrite this as x squared squared minus 6x squared minus 16. And then let's set that u is equal to x squared. So substituting in u for x squared, we've got x here still remaining. And then we've got u squared, that should be x squared squared, excuse me, minus 6u minus 16. We're going to factor this quadratic, so I got 2 sets of parentheses sitting out here, u in one, u in the other. And let's see, I got a negative last term, a negative constant and a negative middle term telling me that inside my parentheses has got to be a positive and a negative. And I need two numbers that are going to multiply to negative 16 and add to negative 6. And just run through a progression. 116, 2 and 8. 2 and 8 looks pretty good. So 2 times 8 is 16, but I need a negative 6. Well, how about a negative 8 and positive 2? And still got the x out here. All right, so we got 3 factors on this thing, but we're going to, so I got 1 factor, so x is just equal to 0. That covers this. Then I'm going to substitute in x squared for u. So we got x squared plus 2 equals 0. Wait a minute, did I talk about possible real zeros? We could have 5 possible real zeros. Does not always mean we're going to have 5 real zeros, but it's possible. And then on our turning points, I take since the leading term is x to the 5th, we take the exponent of 5, subtract 1, and we could have 4 turning points. All right, we got another factor over here, x squared minus 8 equals 0. Got 1 factor right here already done. Well, let's subtract 2 from both sides. So I got x squared equals negative 2. And when I try to take the square root of both sides, look what happens. I got the square root of x2. Well, that's not a real number, so I can't do anything with that. But on the other side, we're going to add 8 to both sides. Take the square root of both sides, and so now we got plus or minus the square root of 8. I'm going to simplify it. You don't have to necessarily. Where x is equal to plus or minus, it's the same thing as plus or minus square root of 4 times the square root of 2. And we know that the square root of 4 is 2. So, even though we could have 5 possible real zeros, we only have 3. 0 is 1, and then we have 2 more with plus or minus 2, the square root of 2. Since this would be an imaginary number, that x equals the square root of negative 2, complex number, they're not real zeros. So we only have 3, even though we could have had a possibility of having 5. Shazam.